Welcome to the Emotional Balance Sheet, the go-to podcast for parents with multiple kids, especially those with twins, triplets, or more, who are navigating the maze of modern family life and personal finance. Whether you're overwhelmed by education or retirement planning, parenting dilemmas, career transitions, or trying to define your purpose and plan, we're here to guide you with empathy, encouragement, and expertise. Hosted by Paul Fenner, founder of Tama Capital, a certified financial planner and parent to 4 kids, including a set of triplets. Our podcast is your ally in the quest for financial peace of mind, proving that money matters, but family comes first. Subscribe now and join our community of empowered parents at tamacapital.com. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon for investment decisions. Clients of Tama may retain positions in the securities discussed in this podcast.
What does comprehensive financial planning even mean? At Tama Capital, it means a family office where lifestyle planning such as retirement, college, portfolio management, and tax prep and planning are all under one umbrella. But it goes beyond numbers. We focus as much on the emotional side of financial planning as we do on the financial side. We get you. We understand your challenges of building a family, business or career, and a healthy life. We are devoted to wealth planning for families like yours because we are you. Learn how our family can help your family by visiting tamacapital.com. How much tech do you let into your life? And do you even know why you let certain tech into your life? I'm really excited to welcome back my friend and Microsoft VP, Scott Hanselman. It's been almost 4.5 years since our last conversation. Scott was one of my first podcast guests and one that has had a big impact on me throughout my corporate career and in Tama by just listening to him talk about productivity, life, tech, and family. Scott and I dive in the heart of his recent TEDx Talk, where he questions whether technology is truly delivering on its promises of convenience, connection, and community. We discuss the concept of this third place, those spaces outside of home and work where real community forms, and how the pandemic and our ever-increasing reliance on technology has shifted those boundaries. Scott gets personal about his own life transitions, raising his teenagers in a hyper-connected world and the realities of tech overload. He shares the emotional story of how his parents once sold their van to buy him a Commodore 64 computer. And if you're watching on YouTube, he's still got the Commodore 64. You're going to see it. It's a singular act that changed the course of his life and continues to shape his perspective on investing in his own kids' potential. We also explore the emotional side of money, how we manage stress, organize family finances, and have those sometimes tough conversations with our partners. Scott even shares the allowance system that he's kept with his wife over the last 25 years. They'll be married 25 years next year. So whether you're navigating new tech at home, feeling overwhelmed by everything throwing at you by life right now, or simply longing for a little more harmony, I think you're going to find a lot in this conversation insightful and relatable with some serious nostalgia along the way. Please enjoy my conversation with Scott Hanselman.
I have another podcast with Mark Rasinovich, who's the Chief Technology Officer for Azure, called Mark and Scott Learn To. Yeah, so we would end up yapping for 10 minutes before the show, and then now the rule is as soon whoever shows up first hits record. Might be something funny gets said.
I can't believe it's been almost 4.5 years since you and I had our first conversation together. Like that to me feels like an entire lifetime. And like you just said, you have a 19-year-old and a 17-year-old, so God only knows the life transitions you went through during the last 4 years.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot.
So, I just wanted to reach out to and get you back on because obviously so much has changed since then. But what really sparked my just grabbed me was this latest TED Talk that you did at Portland about how, are we are we getting the promises that tech has made to us? And just to kind of give our viewers I'll link in the show notes to the TED Talk that you did, along with our previous conversation in your LinkedIn profile. But for those that don't remember Scott or new listeners, Scott is a VP at Microsoft. And what exactly is your role today? Because I know that you're like all over the world, like talking about tech and not just tech, but how it integrates with, much of the people that listen to this, to my show, which are families, like trying to figure out the day-to-day life of how to, handle all the financial and personal priorities tugging at them, kids, whether you have 2 like you do or 4 like me. There's no shortage of things pulling at us, and tech is one of them. Yeah.
The TED Talk is at mylastname.com, hanselman.com. So it's too hard to find on YouTube, so I stuck it at hanselman.com. So I live in Portland, Oregon, and it's a TEDx Talk. Portland has pretty large TEDx organization. Like TEDx could be like a community college in a small thing in a small town, or it could be something big. It's one of the 3 or 4 top TEDs. I think about 4,500 people came, and we did it in a really big.
Wow, really big that is the big one.
Yeah, it was pretty legit. And I didn't want to do it. I had been asked on and off over a couple of years, and I didn't want to take up space because like a lot of TED people, they're trying to sell you a book. Like what are they trying to sell you? So I needed to not sell anyone anything. I wanted to have an idea that didn't have like and now you can get my PDF or subscribe to my Substack. I didn't want to do that. But as I'm getting towards the retirement part of my career, like I'm closer to retirement than I am to the beginning of the career, I started thinking about all the things that technology promised me, when I started in like the 80s, and did it meet those promises? Like, were we lied to, or were we just sold a bill of goods? And I think I broke them down into like community and convenience and things like that. And I thought it went okay. I'm pretty happy with the result.
Well, I would say it went more than okay, because that thing was super emotional. I don't know how you kept it together when you were talking about, and I would like you to tell this story if you can. I'm in the back of my mind, I was talking to my wife, Teresa. I said, I'm having Scott Hanselman back on. And I had to refresh her memory of who you were. But I said, watch this TED Talk, and that he did. And I said, one of us is going to cry, and it's probably going to be me.
Yeah.
But that was, so I'll let you tell the story, but that was so emotional. I don't know how you kept it together. And then you just kept layering on, like in your talk about, as you mentioned, connection, convenience, and creativity. Those were the 3 things. And then you talked about community. And these 3 places in our lives, home, work, and this 3rd place. And you talked about how COVID took home and work kind of like away from us, and everything just kind of got smashed into one. And I thought,
yeah. And then the 3rd, so there's 2 things there. Let's do the 3rd place first. So
okay.
The theory of the 3rd place is not my theory. It's been written up for the last 30 years. If you ever saw the TV show Cheers, right, where they all go to the bar and everyone knows your name.
I'm a big Boston guy, so I love Cheers.
Right? So everybody's like, Norm, cheer. So the 3rd place is the place that isn't work and isn't home that you go to find community. And the theory is, to be a fully formed human being, you need 3 places. You need a good home life, you need a healthy work life, and you need a 3rd place. Now, Cheers is a bar, but the 3rd place could be church, could be mosque, could be teaching your kids Little League, could be volunteering at a school. It's just got to be a 3rd place. It's community. It could be the farmer's market. It's got to be somewhere. COVID plus the internet turned work and home into the internet, and then work and home and where you hang out after work into the internet. So now the internet is all 3 places. But from a physical perspective, all 3 places then become your spare bedroom. So home, work, I work here, I live here, and then I turn Teams off and I turn on Call of Duty. So blurring those 3 things, it's very hard to be a healthy, fully formed human if you are only in one place. And I point out in the TED Talk that, like, for people who have a mobility challenge or who might be homebound, That's great. They can have fully formed relationships across 3 places. But as a general rule, making a generalization, which I think is a safe generalization, you get your personal satisfaction, your spiritual satisfaction, your community satisfaction as you move through the world. So having multiple physical spaces is important. And I think we lost something when we switched everything to online. And we hear people saying, go touch grass. It's not bad advice. If you can touch grass, maybe go touch some grass.
That's interesting because that's one of the things that I struggled with most when I came into my firm almost 9 years ago now on a full-time basis. Was I went from this corporate career background setting where I was surrounded by people day in and day out to my office, which is in my home, and it's just me. It's like, I look to the left, there's a window.
So I literally, before this, I just did a talk for an hour in the UK on a thing. And they said, we want you to talk to like 200 people in the UK. And this always happens. They all get online. And then there's a bunch of people physically in a room in London, and then there are a bunch of people on Teams, and then they all turn off their cameras. And then I'm alone in my spare bedroom talking to myself. So I've gotten nailed by this multiple times. So I asked them, would you please take the laptop, rotate it, point it at the crowd? I need to see the bobbleheads. I got to see what's going on. And that, like mentioning that, calling that out, and having a little bit of prep. So like, I need to see people. I've even had times where I knew that I wouldn't be able to see them because of Zoom webinars or whatever. And I FaceTime a friend and I put the phone here. Because having a person that you can talk to, like, because the lizard brain knows that you're talking to yourself. Like the reason that you feel a headache after spending a day alone in your room is that you're not really here. Like, I can see you and you're high def, but the lizard brain knows you're not here. So I'm hallucinating you. And that headache that you feel as you finish your day, like, I don't know why I'm so exhausted. Well, you were sitting on your butt all day, pretending to talk to people, and then you were cognitively lying to yourself because there's no electrical energy in the room of other people existing.
Right. That's a really good point. Like, and so I have a couple peer groups that I'm involved with. One of them is over my right shoulder. That sketch is by Carl Richards, and I'm in this Society of Advice is the name of it, that advisors like myself, financial planners like myself around the country come together one time during the month, and Carl usually has a guest on, and we're interfacing with them. And what's interesting is that Carl has this rule where we actually have turned off the chat feature within the Zoom community while the conversation's going on, and it's as much of a requirement as you can to be on camera and to like be present for that 90 minutes, because obviously that's when you would get the most out of it. Can you do it all the time, like every month? No, but he makes it a really good point of trying to stay engaged and being able to look at other people's faces and expressions. And so I totally get what you're saying. And that was one of the hardest transitions for me when I came into this, is not being around people. So what I would do is and I know I'm going off on a tangent here and I got to bring us back, but I would go to the library in the afternoon. So I would work in my office, my home office in the morning, and then go to the library in the afternoon just to be around somebody. Or I go to Panera or, the local, Starbucks or whatever. Yeah. And when I think of third place, I think of Howard Schultz, because that was always one of his MOs, was like, he wanted Starbucks to be the third place. It's a place to go and hang out and find community.
100% agree. I'm looking at my schedule here, and I've got 2 meetings after this, and then I've got an hour at 11. And I'm honestly like thinking about like, okay, where can I go? I used to sit at McDonald's because it's $1 for Diet Coke and they have free Wi-Fi. So it's like, for the price of $1, I can sit there. That's my Starbucks, right? Yeah. I used to, before COVID, I used to go to the mall and sit with my laptop at the food court just to get the buzz. I refer to that electrical energy of people in the room.
Yeah, I completely agree. just to back up, like one of the things that I found, I still don't remember exactly how I found you, but I found your talk on scaling yourself. How many years ago was that? That was probably 10, 11, 12 years ago?
Let me go and search for that. If you search for Hanselman productivity, I've been talking about productivity for many, many, many years. I've got Hanselman's complete list of productivity 2014. That was 11 years ago.
Okay.
I would say I've got videos going back 15 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I saw a lot of connection between this TED Talk that you did in Portland and scaling yourself. And I think a lot of that tied around this whole idea of being stressed. And I'm going through what I call my annual planning season right now. So I'm sitting down with the families I work with and having a discussion, a conversation. And there's one theme that keeps coming up over and over again is how parents feel stressed, not only financially, but personally as well, like with kid activities, with the cost of everything, and feeling like we know that we have good careers, we know we have good jobs, we know we have good families, but it feels like we are still like falling behind, like we're not being able to keep up. And
well, I would even gently push back on that. We know we have good jobs, we know we have good, like we don't know that. I could get laid off tomorrow. You know what I mean? Like I'm very blessed to have the position that I have, but there's nothing is promised. So I think that it's the impermanence of things that are stressing people out in the sense that, like, I think I have a good job, right? But, do I have a couple of months pay in the bank in case? You never know. I've seen people work for a company for 20 years and then a day before their 20th anniversary, they're laid off.
Bam. Yeah. I guess I probably should have rephrased that. Is when I look at their current level of income, these are people that are in the top 10% of average household incomes in the U.S. Mm-hmm. And most people don't even realize that. And I think when I kind of push back and make that point, they're like, how is that even possible? Because to your point, like I still feel that stress and that anxiety about what's going to happen. And then obviously we're probably going to touch on this at some point is AI, but that's the common theme that I keep getting over and over. And I've had like 25 meetings in the last 2 weeks, I think, with families, talking about not only their financial plans, but the emotional side of their life, which is a lot of what I do. And most people don't realize that. I think people have the stereotype of a financial planner. It's like, that's just my numbers guy. They pick the stocks and the bonds or whatever, and they manage my assets. But that's like 20% of what I do. It's the 80%. And having conversations like this and having my podcast, which I kind of use as this platform to bring people like you on to talk about these things in a more humanistic level and be able to pull threads to say, okay, what can we do?
Yeah. Well, my financial advisor, I would say, is probably 80% therapist, 20% financial advisor.
So I'm right on cue.
Because I'll tell him, this is what I feel right now, and I don't want to feel that. I'd like to feel this instead. So, setting up a 529 for my kid, like the day he was born, a college savings plan for folks that may not be familiar. The reason that we did that is not just because it makes good financial sense, but because I didn't want to feel a certain way.
Yeah.
Because I hear people saying, oh man, I got 2 kids in college and da-da-da-da. Like, I thought, if I could plan for that 20 years ahead of time, would I feel differently when that time came? I think did we talk about the allowance system that my wife and I use last time I was on the show?
We did, but it probably would be good to, and I think I stole that from you afterwards because I read Ron Lieber's book as well. I think we talked about that and something similar. And I've been running that system for the last 4 years.
One of the, number one, there's many causes for divorce, but one of the main causes for divorce is arguing about money. Mm-hmm. And, this is my next month, actually in a week and a half, is my 25th anniversary, well, 25 years. And it's such an argument about like money. It's like, why'd you spend that? Why'd you do that? So how do you set up a system by which you can do whatever you want, in quotes, and buy the things that you want to buy as an individual, while still partnering up with your life partner and making sure that you don't, bother them or make your finances their problem. My wife and I put all of our money in one pile. It's in a single account. We've always done that. We don't have like the separate accounts thing. Like, everyone's different. That's a whole separate conversation. Some people do the like my money, her money, their money. We have our money. But what was happening was that we would see on the debit card, 5th of the month, paycheck goes in, mortgage, car payment, insurance, big numbers, $1,000, $500, $500. And then it was like $5, $3, $4, $6, $10. And it was like Starbucks, Chipotle, McDonald's, blah, blah, blah. And it was the psychological pressure of the scroll bar in QuickBooks that went from the big rocks to the noise. And we're trying to, what's the way to get rid of the noise? So there's lots of ways to do that. You can do envelope budgeting. You could put it on a credit card. You could hide it. What we decided to do 25 years ago, and we've been doing even now, is giving ourselves cash. We have an allowance. So I get $100 a week, which is a lot.
Cash.
Go to my pocket, right?
For those of you listening, Scott's pulling out his cash.
Let me see what I got here. I have $115 right now. So the reason that that's significant is I would come home with like an Xbox game. My wife would come home with a purse or a dress or whatever. And she'd be like, $70 for an Xbox game. That's, and like, why'd you buy a PlayStation? We already have an Xbox. Well, PlayStation's $300, $400, right? So showing $300 on a credit card is a problem. Like, that's like, hey, you made a purchase and we didn't plan that. We didn't plan for that. But at $100 a week, which is very generous, all I have to do to get an Xbox is save. And I don't necessarily need to, but I do. I save. So I can go to lunch today. Like, after this, I'm going to go to Jimmy John's, or I can not. And I save that $15, and I do that, and I save my $100 a week. And then in a month, I come home with an Xbox. And rather than my wife saying, "This is BS, why'd you buy an Xbox?" She goes, "Oh, tell me all about your toy that you bought." Because she knows it was paid for with cash.
Completely different conversation. Completely different conversation.
And you go back to QuickBooks, now just online banking, and if you can, I can actually see the full month of expenses without scrolling, because it's big rocks and then allowance. And the noise has been removed. The arguments have been removed. We haven't changed. The number's been the same. We haven't increased our allowance in all these years. And again, it's very generous, but it's not just allowance do anything. It's lunch money.
Yeah.
Right? It's gas money. So it's a bunch of cash that, and again, like I said, I got about $115 right now. When it's gone, you stop. If you want double meat at Chipotle, there's a cost.
Yeah, I had no. See, this is the thing I love about the podcast and these conversations. I write down literally like maybe 1, 2 questions, 3 questions at the most. But this thing is totally unscripted. I had no idea we're going to end up talking about this today.
Sorry.
No, this is great.
Yeah.
Let's bring this back to Portland TED Talk, because there's 2 things that really resonated with me. One is the story of your parents selling the van to buy the Commodore 64. And then the second point was your son coming to you and saying, "Dad, how can we dumb down my iPhone?"
Yeah.
So I don't know how we unpack those two, but
we'll just do them one at a time.
Okay, you choose first.
So the dumb phone thing, it's so interesting. I did a TikTok. My 17-year-old had a couple of guys at school that said they were getting addicted to TikTok, and they were like, and they had to study for the SATs. And did they say, Scott, like how, like what made them aware? Like, so obviously they had some kind of awareness. They were studying for the SATs, and they would be studying for 10, 15 minutes, and they were finding that their attention span wasn't long enough to make it through the SATs. The SATs are like a 90-minute to 2-hour long test. Standardized tests here in the US. And he was like, I kept finding myself on TikTok. Like, I'd be on the SATs, and then it's like, I've grabbed my phone. And then suddenly I'm on the internet. And he's like, so then we tried screen time, where you have to put in a PIN number. And he figured out ways around that. So like putting artificial blocks and graying stuff out was not the move. So he's like, can I get a dumb phone? And I was like, what do you mean a dumb phone? He's like, one of those old timey flip phones. Because he'd seen like his grandfather having like a Nokia.
Yeah.
And it was really funny. It was disappointing. I did a TikTok about this and like 90% of the comments were positive, but a bunch of other people were just like, that never happened. I'll take things that never happened for 200, Alex. I'm like, what? Whose life is so empty that they would make a TikTok about a thing that didn't happen? Like the kid's right there. I don't care if he uses a dumb phone or a flip phone. He came to me. He says, I want a phone. So I go online and I think, what's the minimum phone that we want? Flip phone, long battery. It needs Google Maps because he wants a GPS and it needs texting. So I found an Alcatel phone. It runs some kind of crappy OS that's not Android, but it has Google Maps. And it has
That's
texting.
like old school.
But it's not old. It's a modern flip phone.
Okay.
It's $50.
I remember Alcatel I remember that brand name.
Yeah. So they're still around and they're making phones, but they have Google Maps and a GPS on them. And they have 4G. Right? They're not like they need to work on modern towers.
Yeah.
And I needed a micro SIM because the iPhone's got that SIM slot on the side. Because he has an iPhone. And I'm not saying my kid's like a saint and he switched to dumb phones all the time. I'm saying he pulls out the micro SIM, he copied his contacts onto the SIM, and he just moves the SIM over to the dumb phone when he wants to decompress. And then we got an SD card and a bunch of MP3s and ripped a bunch of CDs that I have and got him a wired headphones, like the wired AirPods. They're the same shape as AirPods, but they're wired. And so that he decompresses a couple of times a week. I don't think that's controversial. So I know I'm harping on this point, but like I was shocked at the number of people like, no kid would ever do that. If you think no kid would ever do that, then first you're not giving your kid enough credit. But additionally, you're underestimating how bad social media is for us. The brain is not supposed to be that attached and connected all the time.
I lost the social media war finally like 2 months ago. So my triplets will be 15 in December, and then my plus one, by the time that this releases, she'll be 13. And we finally had to break down and get them, let them have Snapchat, and who knows the blowback I'll get from this, but it really was because the team sports that they're involved in, that's how all these kids are communicating.
Yeah.
And so
Snapchat is their group chat.
Right. And so I'm like, I've obviously I'm a parent. I have responsibility. I can make the decision. No, you're not going to have it, and have my kid feel like they're ostracized, or say, okay, you can have it. And that's the avenue that Teresa and I went down and gave it to him, or let him have it. But it's still uneasy. And the reason why this actually reared its ugly head a few days ago, because my daughter that's on it, I didn't know this. Like Snapchat will tell you like the location of your friends if you turn it on.
I didn't want to say anything, but number one thing with Snapchat is it's an automatic location sharer, and it will suggest people not based on phone numbers and contacts, but by their connection with other people. So all it takes is for one creeper to be friends with a kid from your kid's school, and then it will recommend, oh, you're friends with so-and-so, you should be friends with so-and-so. And the next thing you know, you've got some old dude pretending to be a kid talking to a bunch of kids. So monitor their friends. I tell my kids on Snapchat, unless you've seen that kid in person, you don't be friends with them on Snapchat.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Like they'll be friends with like, oh,
advice.
Who's that? Well, that's Anna from another school. Have you ever met them?
Yeah. So what happened was my daughter wanted one of her friends to come over to hang out, stay the night or whatever. And she's like, no, I'm busy, whatever. And then like hours later, she sees that person with another group of friends in the neighborhood. And then it's like tears and emotional drama for like the rest of the night. And it's like, son of a blank, that's the thing about I think social media, that it's if you have it, it's constantly in your face. And like when we were growing up, obviously we didn't have that. And now I'm trying to figure out like, well, how do I help console her? How does it's okay? Well, I don't know. I don't have the answers, but I knew that that was interesting. I did not know that about Snapchat until Teresa explained it to me. So we made sure that you can disable that locator. And so we shut that. We made sure that
you can't disable the locator?
No, you can. You can.
Oh, you can. Okay, cool.
You can. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, you make that's interesting how much pushback you got. And it's probably the most vocal, the people that said that never happened because.
Well, I mean, everyone's got different relationships with their kids. Anytime anyone goes online and says, "Oh yeah, my kid said this," or they were doing that math, or they did this thing, and someone's kid isn't doing that math or isn't doing that thing, like you get into this unintentional pecking order where there's some implication that your kid's better than someone else's kid. So I think they would take it as like, oh yeah, look, Hanselman's saying that his kid is so, I don't know, he's so mentally present that he realized that he needed to get off of TikTok. He did. I don't know. That happened.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a story worth. And when I first heard that, I'm like, that's when I first watched the TED Talk, I'm like, that's a story that needs to be shared because there are kids out there that have the awareness to be able to say, no, this is bad.
Like he's got a record player. He's into retro stuff. Got a VCR. Like I was into 60s stuff in the 80s. Right, he's into 90s stuff. Like okay. There's kids that want retro tech. Like, I mean, I don't know if you've had this issue with your kids, but we have a problem where my kids want to watch a movie, and it's like, which of the 6 streaming services is that freaking movie on?
Right.
So I live in Portland. There's a lot of video stores in Portland. Like there's video stores you can physically go to, like a Blockbuster, not a Blockbuster, but there are video stores. So. We're getting back into physical media because if you want to watch a movie from the 90s and you can't find it on freaking Peacock, just buy the DVD.
But then you have to make sure you still have a DVD player, though.
But see, we just have an Xbox, and the Xbox is
that's right.
The Xbox is the TV streamer thing. It's the Xbox is the Netflix, it's the Prime Video, it's the Peacock, and it's the Xbox, and it has a DVD player.
Okay. So let's tackle the second part of your TED Talk, the van.
Yeah. Let me stand up and get this thing. Hang on.
You still have it.
Yeah.
So for those of you listening, Scott is going to get his Commodore 64.
Yeah. So in 1984, I was 10, and my 5th grade teacher, Mrs. Hill, had introduced us to an Apple II. And this was back in the days when you would have one computer in a classroom, not a computer for every kid, because these are $2,500 computers in the 80s, right? It's like $10,000. It's a huge amount of money. And that was the first time I'd ever seen a computer. And then there was the TRS-80, or what they call the Trash 80 from Radio Shack. And my dad is a firefighter. He's now retired. My mom was a zookeeper. So we weren't. They paid $20,000 for their house in the 70s, a very small, modest house. I shared a bedroom with my brother. So not exactly a house where computers are rolling in and out of the house. But Mrs. Hill said, Scott seems to be really good at this. You should try to get him access to a computer. And then she let me steal the Apple II. We would basically, on Friday nights, we would borrow the Apple II, rather. We'd sneak it into the car. And as long as we had it back on Sunday, it was a victimless crime. It was basically we got permission from the principal to borrow this computer. And I don't know why she gave me that privilege. She could have given it to other kids, but she believed in me. But after a while, it was problematic. We can't keep taking this computer. She says
Can I interrupt? Did you realize that as a 10-year-old?
No, I had no idea. I knew it was expensive. Okay. Like I knew that moving it was something to be extremely careful about. So I had the sense of this is precious cargo, but we would put it in the back of my dad's van and then take it home. And then when you don't have a ton of money, you just have cars in various states of disrepair, right? You have cars on blocks because it's your bank. you drive by people's houses even now in 2025, you see 5 or 6 cars in their backyard or on their farm or whatever, because I live in rural Oregon. Those are all potentially cars you could fix up and sell. That's all money. Like, people might look down on folks that have cars on blocks. That's a bank account. That's potential stuff I could sell. So I came home one day and the van was gone. It was a 72 Ford Econoline, and they had sold the van and they had bought a Commodore 64 at Sears. It was $299, and I have the box. I have the receipt. I have the with the tape on it, the Sears yellow tape that they used to put on when you buy something at Sears. They didn't want you to shoplift it, so they had the tape thing, and they would wrap the tape around the thing, and that's how you didn't get yelled at when you walked out the door.
God, that's bringing back so many memories.
Yeah. So having that Commodore 64, and I think in retrospect, it was probably $600 because it was the Commodore, which was $299, and then there's this other thing here, right? And then the disk drive.
Disk drive.
Right? You remember that?
Oh, yeah.
And nostalgia is a hell of a drug.
Oh, my God. I haven't seen one of those in, God, I don't know how long.
Isn't that great? And here's the thing, right? Again, people are hearing this as maybe they're seeing video, or maybe you're putting video on LinkedIn. I'm not sure. But like, I'm putting my finger in the center of the floppy. You know what that feels like. You can feel that. Yeah. Paul, just by me showing you that, you can feel what it feels like to put your finger right there, and what that floppy kind of like. It's core memory stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, funny you mentioned that, because I was just thinking about Inside Out 2, like, or 1 or whatever, like core memories.
Yeah. So the thing that's so significant about the car is that the car like took us places. You know what I mean? And the car is considered big, and it's this house, car, right? These are the two big financial tools that one has in their life. And when the car is gone, it takes up, there's like a vacuum of space. And when you take something that's worth $600 and it's a car, it's a big van, and then now you've compressed it and down into a thing you can hold in your hand, and you go, here's now a similar amount of value. That really stuck with me, this idea that like a car, a computer, or a diamond ring, they're all $600. Like, how could you compare a diamond ring with a car? Like, that doesn't make any sense. It never computed. So there was a sense of like reverence in the, like, this is the car embodied, and now it's this size. They've transmuted the car into a small computer. And there's some parallel universe where they didn't give me access to that computer, and who knows what I'd be doing.
In my world, we call these things called money scripts. It's things that happen to you typically in your childhood that really laid a foundation of how you view money, how you spend, how you save, how you invest, all those things. Do you think that had an impact on your financial life, your money script?
That's a great point. It's good to talk about money in this way. Two things made me think about money. First, our family is from Scotland, from Carnoustie, Scotland. And we would go to all of our 4th of July parties, our Thanksgiving, Christmas. They all had like bagpipers and, like a pig on a spit, like big Scottish haggis parties, right? And my Uncle Ronnie, my great Uncle Ronnie, would say, "You'll never catch a cold from a Scot because a Scot never gives anything away." Right? So like we were like, I don't know if that's a Scottish stereotype or if it's just a Hanselman stereotype. Like the stereotype is we're cheap, we're frugal. And he's like, let me tell you about the time we discovered copper wire, 2 Scots fighting over a penny. That kind of like frugality was just baked in from like day one. And then again, we were, it's always bad when someone's like, we were poor. You don't know you're poor when you're poor. We were working class, comfortable. I didn't miss any meals, but we were frugal and responsible. Like we had a wood stove because heating oil was expensive, and we would go to the dump the dump, like we call it a landfill now.
Landfill today, yeah.
So we would go to the dump to get stuff. So we dump stuff off, but you'd also see stuff at the dump, and you're like, that's cool. So the dump is kind of like Goodwill. Like I go to Goodwill now or Salvation Army to get stuff. You can always find a Nintendo or an old Xbox or something cool. So I'm always picking up stuff at Goodwill. I'm there every week. And I have a very core memory of going to the dump with my dad, and he saw somebody with a barbecue who was going to kind of yeet this barbecue off the back of their car. And he's like, no, stop. Does that work? And they're like, yeah, we just don't need it anymore. I was like, that's a perfectly good barbecue. It was all rusty and nasty. So then we're transferring, get like 2 pickup trucks in a landfill that you could actually see. And we're transferring.
I can picture it.
And we're leaving with something from the dump. And then we go home and he gets a wire brush and we spend the afternoon cleaning, disassembling, completely cleaning the thing out, repainting it with Rust-Oleum.
Yep.
And then letting it, and then having charcoal briquettes and eating on the barbecue that evening. It's just like that. So that core memory of like waste not, want not is like so fundamental. So the fact that the Commodore is 45 years old and still works. I replaced the capacitors. For technical people, you can go and Google for Commodore CAP, C-A-P, CAP kit. There are basically, you could buy a Ziploc baggie of all the capacitors and parts that are common, that everyone knows after 40 years. These are the parts that burn out. And there's TikTok, on my TikTok, there's a Commodore 64 playlist where I show the taking apart of the Commodore, replacing all the capacitors that die after 40 years and bringing it back. So like these things still work. So me fixing a Commodore 64 on TikTok from my garage there's a direct line to my dad stopping a stranger from throwing away a perfectly good barbecue.
When you're telling that story, I'm thinking in the back of my head, my aunt and uncle, who both my godparents, and my aunt passed away a few years ago. She was kind of this mainstay in my life, but her and my uncle actually won an Ohio lottery. We lived on the border between Michigan. We lived in Michigan, but real close to Ohio, and they won an Ohio lottery. They won like $4.2 million, like, I don't know, 30 some years ago, I think. Well, maybe closer to
generational wealth. It should be.
Yeah. But what most people don't realize is that people that win like a lottery, they end up going bankrupt within like 8 to 10 years. It's a very high percentage.
Yeah. More than not.
Yeah. And they were the opposite. They ended up having more money than what they started with. And they would go on trips and whatever. And when you're talking about your Scottish uncle, it just made me think of my Uncle Russ, because I always had this phrase like, if I put a quarter into my Uncle Russ, he would crap out 2 dimes and a nickel.
That makes me think of, are you old enough to remember the classic?
We're only 2 part. I think you're 2 years older than I am. I'll be 50 next year.
So then you remember the Saturday Night Live, the International Change Bank, the North American Change Bank. It was an ad. Very old, very old. You would have been 10 or even younger. Saturday Night Live had this commercial that was all about a change bank. It was a bank. We only do change, what we do at this bank. He says, you give me a 5, I'll give you 5 singles. You give me a single, I'll give you 4 quarters. How do we make money here at North American Change Bank? Volume. They just make change. And they make, it is a whole commercial, and you're like, oh my God. And then the whole thing is like a minute and a half long, and the payoff is, and how do we make money? Volume. I don't see how that calculates. And I just,
right. That math doesn't jive with me.
There's no way that they make any money at all at the North American Change Bank.
I had no idea we were going to go down memory lane today with this conversation.
It's okay.
This is awesome. So, I know I only have you for a finite period of time because I know you're back to back to back. But, what other, one, maybe 2 key takeaways would you want people to know from your TED Talk? Hopefully, they'll hit the link in the show notes. Go watch it. It's worth the time. It's 15, 20 minutes. You're going to get a lot out of it. But
I appreciate
that. What would you want people to know about that?
I think that the meta point, I didn't use these words in the TED Talk, but the meta point is to avoid sleepwalking. Like you let technology into your life, whether it be an Alexa or an AI or something, and you become quietly dependent on it. You have to remind yourself, and by saying, don't sleepwalk through life, like wake up and pay attention. Have you changed the framework of your brain? Have you introduced a piece of technology that made your life better? Or did it infiltrate in some way and make your life worse? Like my wife was complaining because we'd hooked up Alexa to turn the lights on and off, and we had bought some smart plug, and I had forgotten that the smart plug required an account, and you have to log into the account, and there's a name and a password and a whole thing. And then you realize that in order to turn off this light, we're saying, Alexa, turn off the light, and it goes to China and back to turn off a light that's 5 feet away. And it seemed like fun at the time to hey, look, we can turn the lights off. So we un-Alexa'd all the house. There's just it's a perfectly good kitchen timer, and it'll always tell us what Brad Pitt's birthday is or whatever kind of fact that we need. But the idea of it doing that was silly. So I woke up in that sense, and I switched to a thing called a Home Assistant. Home Assistant's an open source project that is basically Alexa for your house, but it doesn't need the internet. It just runs inside your house. Like if your house were in airplane mode, Paul, what would still work? Like it's cool to have a garage door opener that's hooked up to my Q so I can open the garage from my phone. But if your phone's dead, the internet's dead, you're home, can you still open your garage door? Same thing with smart locks. Do you have a smart lock? Do you tap it, or could you just maybe get a keypad that's all local? So people are always joking because they think that I must be, as a techie, someone who's got a very lit up smart house. But that's a way of kind of accidentally sleepwalking and letting Amazon into your life. I would encourage people to kind of audit their spaces and think about, is this technology making us more creative? Is it allowing us to connect with people like FaceTime? That's an awesome thing. My parents love FaceTime. Is it allowing us to be more convenient, or is it selling our data overseas?
Well, I think that is a perfect way
to wrap there. Sorry to dump it and get all serious at the end there.
No, that's perfect. The audience will definitely take that away. I know I will, but I don't know. I want to make sure that we don't make this another 4-year gap. So hopefully we'll be able to contact or do this again.
Of course. Here, maybe every 4 years it's a tradition. Yeah.
Well, Scott, I can't thank you enough for coming on and being part of this journey, because the podcast actually turns, by the time this airs, it'll be 5 years old, which is...
How many episodes now? I was pretty early in there.
I think you were, I just had it up. I think you were 45-ish.
Oh, wow.
And now we're probably 215, 216 or so.
One a week?
Yeah, but yes, for the most part, for the 5-year journey, it's almost been one a week. We missed some weeks here and there, obviously, but yeah.
I just hit episode 1014.
I was going to say, you hit over 1,000 with Hanselman Minutes.
Isn't that crazy?
Because when did you start that?
Hanselman Minutes started in 2004, 2005. It's been 20 years.
20 years. Yeah. Wow.
That'll do it. Every Thursday for 20 years.
That's amazing. Well,
they got to put a tariff on guys with podcasts at this point. I would have to pay that retroactively. Everybody's got a podcast now. We started early days.
Right. But the thing is that when there's this number out there that's floated there's 3 million podcasts out there. Well, yes, that may be true, but there's only I think the number I've heard is there's less than 100,000 that are actually active.
That's a really great point. The world is littered with podcasts of an average length of 7 episodes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
People give up. People give up because it's hard. It's a marathon. It is challenging to edit. It is challenging to book guests. It's challenging to have a cohesive conversation. Extemporaneous speech is challenging. Tools like Riverside and Zencaster make it easier, but for sure, it's not for the faint of heart. Good job sticking with it.
Well, thank you. You as well. All right, Scott. Thank you so much for the time. And audience, be sure to look at the show notes. I've got Scott's LinkedIn connection there, his link to his podcast, or not his podcast. Well, you can get to his podcast too.
You can find everything Hanselman related at Hanselman.com. From there, you can kick off to the podcast, the YouTube, the TikTok, and the TED Talk is on the homepage.
Awesome. All right, Scott, great to see you again, and I'll look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thank you, sir.
All right, take care. I know I said this a few times during the conversation with Scott, but I think it bears repeating. These conversations I have with people are not scripted. Like I mentioned, I start with maybe 1 to 3 questions, and I'm usually lucky if I get through the first question and the conversation just goes where it needs to go. And I knew that would happen with Scott. I didn't know that we were going to talk about some of his financial or his family financial practices, which I think were great. I knew we were going to talk about his son and him wanting to dumb down his iPhone. Why? Because he had the awareness that it was negatively impacting him, specifically around studying for his SAT scores or test. But I think one of the things that Scott closed on, I think was the biggest takeaway for me, is don't sleepwalk through tech. Understand the importance of being mindful of how tech enters and I guess exits your life, but once it's in, can you really get it back out? And are those conveniences really serving us? Or are we letting them control our own routines and mental health? And you'll recall that Scott gave the example of the Alexa and being able to have the plug-in Alexas that will turn the lights on and off, and how basically that one command was going to China and then back. And it made him think, like, do I really want to be doing this? I think the other thing I want to mention is protecting your third place. I've mentioned a few times on how when I started in TAMA on a full-time basis over 9 years ago, that was a really hard transition because I went from an environment of being around people, whether it was a positive or negative one, to being by myself. And Scott even mentioned about going to McDonald's to have a $1 Diet Coke and free Wi-Fi, just to be able to get out a change of scenery. And our environments, they have an impact on our creativity, on how we feel. So whether it's your church or, like I mentioned, Starbucks, Howard Schultz, that's where I kind of first heard this third place from. But regardless of where or what it may be, having those is vital to nurture real physical connections outside your front door. Hopefully you could tell I love this conversation with Scott, and hopefully it won't be another 4 years until I have him back on. Now that you've made it to the end of another great conversation, are you looking for more? If so, head over to tamacapital.com, where you will find all of our conversations. Use the search feature to find the topic or guest you would love to learn more about. Also, don't forget to make someone else's day by sharing our show. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.